Hi, everyone. This is early June morning. I'm here with Aiko. I'm Aisha. And this is Deep Listening with Aiko and Aisha. We're glad you're here. And you want to say something, Aiko?
Yeah, so we were actually chatting about 20 minutes before we started this, and then we chatted a few days before, and you mentioned about this book. What's the name of the book?
Well, the work is Voice Dialogue by Hal and Sidra Stone. They're the originators of it. And there's lots of different books, but the one I'm reading right now is called Embracing Ourselves.
Okay,
And
yeah,
it shows up backwards or frontward, but here it is.
okay. I need to get that book for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, so Aisha was, telling me a little bit about this book because we were talking about how we wanted to discuss listening to our voices, listening to ourselves, right? And so then you mentioned about this book, or you mentioned this book, and then we're talking about maybe listening to our voices or something. I mean, things just kind of happen. There's this synchronicity, it seems like, between you and I always, because you bring something up and I'm like, this is what was happening in my life, how coincidentally,
Right. Well, we're all tapped into the same vein, I guess. Or
yeah, it
uh,
always happens.
yeah, I guess, this is one of our earlier podcasts, and we hope to keep this going. But we created a title, Deep Listening, with Aiko and Aisha, because we saw something central about listening as a concept, listening as a metaphor, listening as a skill. And it's very essential. And when it's an essential metaphor, skill, a concept of that, I think we all need to. I'll say this, and then I'll say I don't know if that's the right way to frame it. We all need to get better at, but I think especially historically, women, because we're taught to listen to all kinds of people and take care of all kinds of people, and but a lot of times, especially maybe I mean, these are stereotypes and generalizations, but especially sometimes I think Asian women were also taught to kind of listen to the people we care for and take care of rather than our own voices, our own deep longing and our own deep desires. And so the idea of having different parts of ourselves, or I mean, there's so many theories out there, and Aiko and I are always talking about a new modality. And yes, there's always something out there, and there's different ways to know. You could call it patterns or belief systems or parts of yourself or voices in your head or fragments of your ego. You can go on and call them different things, and you can play with it a lot of different ways. But you know, we've been practicing listening to each other, because who doesn't need more practice with that? And so we spent some time before we get on to record to do that. And as Aiko was saying, that we were talking about this particular modality called voice dialogue, and the concepts that they illuminate. I don't know how widespread voice dialogue is in the world. They've certainly written a whole bunch of books. There's websites, and there's facilitators of it. It's they don't consider it a therapy, but a tool that anybody can use, and to know yourself. And just before we got on, we landed on the thought of the voice of the inner critic. And I was telling Aiko, and I just talk to her right now, for me, the inner critic really was almost murderous. I mean, nasty, you know, And I've calmed that part of myself considerably, so I can do things. I'm 55 and, creative and engage with people and have relationships and try new things. So I'm not kind of tight and scared of every movement of my life or anything like that. But there's a part of me that really kept me in check, and it was through criticism. And, we can say that, where did it come from? Culture, parenting, all of that. To me, that's not critical where it came from, as much as how to know it and not have it run my life. And so lately I've been realizing how that part of me still has some stronghold. So anyway, did you want to say anything, Aiko?
No, maybe it would be interesting to hear you talk a little bit about I know you haven't finished it, right? The book, but maybe do you want to say anything about what you found so far interesting in that book?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm beginning to say that there's so many different parts of yourself. And I was saying, the goal is compassion, right? Or awareness, and for all parts of ourselves. And one of the themes that have interested me my whole life, probably at least since I was intelligent, like a teenager, is the idea of projection and how we demonize other people and how we get demonized. So the parts of ourselves that we don't know, they show up in other people. They can be these parts of ourselves we don't cherish and enjoy, like in my case, it'd be like sensuality. Like, it's not something that I feel very like, it's not a central part of who I am. I'm much more mental. I've been much more rational and thoughtful, or even heartful and compassionate, but I haven't really been like really tuned to my instincts and my desires on a physical level. And and in fact, I had a dream, which I mentioned to you. I go maybe over 20 years ago, where I was lying on top of a bed, and I was a little apprehensive because I knew there was something under the bed that I was supposed to take care of. And when I looked, I did, and under the bed, and it was worse than I thought. It was a deformed fetus that had been mauled by a dog. It's like, whoa, if that's not a wake-up call, in a dream, what else could be? So for me, that was a totally disowned part of myself, and my vulnerability, my my vulnerability, and my, at this point, my instinctual lover of life part. I was very identified with being good and how do I say it? Being better and being selfless and compassionate and good, and and so anything that didn't look like I was a really great person just was, fodder for criticism. And anyway, so in this work, they call like something like that an awakening dream. The voice dialogue methodology. There's a lot of Jungian psychology perspective in it. So dreams are important in this work too. So, that was a dream. And I've done so much work and I've come a long way, but I realize that there's another layer now where, in fact, I had another dream. I was a week ago, I was telling a friend that was in it. She and I were lying on top of each other. And this is a friend I consider kind of able to be earthy and central. And we were lying on top of each other. And the scene looked like we were near a car, and there was a baby on the car, kind of about to fall off, but I was gently trying to, it was like, how do we keep this baby from falling off? Gently coaxing it to us, and I don't remember the rest of the dream, but I just thought of that, the sensuality, like bringing that back, like the safety in my body and the pleasure in my body, just bringing it back. So uh, so this book is, they have a lot of books, like all books, and they're just trying to illuminate their the voice dialogue method. And you usually have a facilitator who facilitates different voices. And the whole point is not to judge any voice, not to fight for any voice, but to gain an awareness. So there's a part of you that's the aware ego, not the one who's controlling the show, and not the one you disown, but the one that's purely aware. All of these parts exist. That part, as it separates out from, like, some people are very identified with one part of I'm such a good mother, or I want to be a good mother and I have to take care of everybody. And you're strongly identified with that. So you won't even notice that that's actually just another set of beliefs and patterns that they have validity in your life. They can be as active as you want them to be, but they're just a set of patterns, beliefs, systems, and energies. And so as you gain awareness that there's a good mother or a bad mother, a selfish one, so-called, someone who's loyal, someone who's like ready to run free-spirited and never look back, you have many parts, and then you're the aware egos is sort of like really hear each part and not judge anybody and not try to control them and make them do something on your behalf, but let them know each other and let the facilitator, your aware part, know these parts. And then out of that awareness grows the ability to make true choices. It's sort of like informed consent, it's like true, and what is true informed consent. You share all the different parts without trying to convince somebody that one way is the other with any fear tactics or manipulation tactics, and then you let them choose. So you're becoming aware and speaking to all these parts over time. There's parts that will not reveal themselves because you're not safe yet, or because you're too judgmental about this, you're too critical, or there's parts like the part of you that you identify with is threatened by these other parts, not ready to see those, but it might gradually start seeing them. And then the facilitator, or if you're doing it on yourself, which is a little trickier, you have you can gently invite those in dialogue, invite dialogue with those parts of yourself, and then not try to coerce and manipulate you to change, but change organically.
Was that a week ago or 2 weeks ago? I can't remember, but we were talking, and you remember that thing that I told you, like I woke up in the morning and I don't know what triggered, maybe I had a dream or something, but I just realized I've been pretending all my life, to be somebody who's together, responsible, strong, go-getter, right? And it all just came together because when I woke up, I had this image of myself after I had been kind of so-called weak, kind of a sickly child. And then age 6, 7, my mother put me in swimming lessons school, and then I started to gain more strength. And so that between time, I was hospitalized for about a week. And then, my mother felt like, okay, I don't want her to, stay this way for the rest of her life. I want her to be healthier. So that's the reason why she put me in swimming school. And, you know, she also sent me to like a summer camp and all kinds of stuff. But I always sensed her stress and fear and even, you know, anger towards me being not healthy, strong, and all that. So then the swimming, and she was like juicing vegetables, you know, every day, and then I would have to drink that before I go to school. All that really, I think it worked because I started to feel stronger, you know, physically. And then I started to become this different kind of person where I felt comfortable hanging out with friends more. I felt comfortable going to do things, bike ride, different things, because I was a really good swimmer.
Yeah.
By like age 9, I was really good. And then at the same time, I realized my mother really liked me the way I was, right? So as a child, I realized, oh, this is the way that I can please my mother. This is the way to be,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know? And so I learned to be strong together, focused, not aggressive, but what's the word, like assertive, you know,
Uh-huh.
things like that. So that one morning, a couple of weeks ago, it's like, oh, this is not real me. Well, it
Yeah.
is. Part of me is that, but I see myself as more fragile, more delicate,
Mhm.
um, you know, think that kind of characteristics, right? And I decided to do my walk. I do this like 20-30 minute walk every morning when I take the dog out. And I just started to talk to myself, that part of that fragile part of myself,
Mhm.
sensitive, delicate, fragile part of myself, and said, wow, I see you, you know? And I always pretended to be not you. And I know why now. And I said, look, I want to invite you in. I want to acknowledge you. And I said, you don't have to pretend anymore, you know? And I just kept saying, you don't have to pretend anymore. You can be the way you are. You are perfect the way you are. And I, you know, when I walk, I see we have California poppies in the field, you know, delicate things, and, you know, strong big oak trees and things like that. But I said, see that California poppy flower petals? It's so soft and delicate, gentle,
Mhm.
sensitive. You're like that and you never have to change. And so I was having this dialogue, and I was using, I wish I, let's see if I have that book that I can show you. As you were talking to that book, I got this book,
Right.
like, you know, this book.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And I got this
Long time ago.
book
Yeah. Is it?
maybe 8 years ago or so.
Uh-huh.
And there are, you know, different things I do, but definitely there's this thing where I would write in the journal. So I'm like this so-called true self as I write, and then talking to different parts of myself.
Mhm.
And then I think I'm supposed to write with my left hand when I talk to, or when that part of different part of me talks.
Mhm, 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 mhm.
And then so I say, how, you know, I would write with my right hand, how are you today? And then this other, the inner child would say, I'm feeling sad.
Mhm, mhm,
And
mhm.
interestingly, so this is not like a vocal, you know, conversation, but it's on the notebook, right?
Right, right.
And then when I write with my left hand, I write as if a little child is writing,
Mhm,
I mean, just the letters themselves, but also what I say
mhm,
in the writing, like, I am sad today. I
mhm,
don't feel good,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
very simple, but to the point. And so when I was, walking the other day, this book came, to my
Yeah, yeah,
memory, and I'm like, oh, I can just do this with my voice and,
right,
talk to it.
right. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it reminds me of a lot of different modalities, right? Like we talked that there's a lot of overlap between things, and
Mhm.
there's almost nothing new under the sun, right?
Mhm.
It's like there's this sort of the different pathways into it, but it's sort of like we were just talking about puppets earlier, you know, play therapy, right? Like you just sort of use different parts of yourself. Um, You're trying to access things that are not um, front and center in your
Right.
consciousness, and just have a dialogue
Mhm.
with those parts. Um, but we also remember that book. I can't remember the name of it. It was a Fear.
Yeah, fear, right.
Is that what it's called? Fear.
I think so.
And what's the author's name?
Ah, I forgot her name.
Uh, but anyway, she was a like adrenaline
Yeah.
junkie, one of those extreme skiers.
Right.
Talks about like that. She's really intriguing to me because that is something that I don't have, right? Like
Right.
someone who could like go all in for something and just on a physical level and be addicted to adrenaline and then disown other parts of herself. But
Art
then
of Fear, I think.
yeah,
Right?
so
Art.
and she discovered other parts of herself, and then she has her own methodology, right, for kind of accessing and talking to parts of herself. I forget what she calls that, you know.
Um, yeah, where did she go? So Kristen Ulmer.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but she, so she's a more younger version, because I think the inner child work is like 70s kind of thing, right? And
Right.
Hal and Sidra are like the 90s. I mean, not that people aren't doing both of those things now,
Mhm.
but I think uh, 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 Kristen,
Kristen Ulmer, yeah.
yeah, she's like a 2010
Right.
funny thing, you know. So, but everybody, I feel like so many modalities have that piece.
Right.
But I want to go to the part that and recently I was doing the trauma to essence work too. So which is based off of that's by Emily Waymeyer.
Trauma to Essence.
Yeah, work, yeah. So she has a modality where she uses, she's kind of synthesized her work through, the listening framework and constellation work and trauma work and um, um, voice dialogue. And so she's integrated a model and God knows what else. I mean, she's also like a medium kind of person. So, so, um, so what was I going to say about all that? So all of these, and then I think one of our conversation a while back, I was kind of going about a quote that I got from this other couple that I was listening to. Basically, awareness is enough or something like that.
Mhm.
And I really like that thought. And then you think, how do you get to that awareness without judging, without criticizing, without kind of saying, I like this part of me, I like the playful, the intelligent, articulate part of me. I don't really like this part of me that is inner critic and afraid of life kind of part of me. I don't really want too much, the addictive part of me. I don't really want too much to do with. How do you just see everything, the landscape of your soul, of your heart, of your mind, and just become aware of it and just let it exist.
Mhm.
I think of the inner, my mind is going to the outer too. When you look around to the world and you see all this pain and suffering and tribulation, and or you see things in other people that you love or reject, how do you live with all that? So you start with the living with yourself internally, these parts, and then I guess it's just it just grows. You just have more peace, and you can show up and give your best, or give your all, or be there with people in their suffering. I guess, I don't know. So just awareness is enough. The aware ego in this work is called. It's not your pusher. Which is what it sounded like, your pusher, the one you said that they have you can be fun, playful, and name parts of yourself, but they talk about the powerful selves. There's your pusher, critic, perfectionist, power broker, and pleaser. Any of these subpersonalities might be part of your own general protector controller system. And so then she talks about different kinds of pushers, and there's the East Coast pusher and the pusher and the New Age pusher, and I really love that because I was like, oh my God, that's so me, the New Age pusher, like nothing. It says, I'm going to read a little bit, just funny. The New Age pusher. Nothing in recent history has been more exciting for pushers, at least on the West Coast, than this recurrent period of New Age expansionism. The possibilities for tormenting us are limitless, and our pushers delight in the unfolding of a myriad of shoulds. Marilyn's pusher had been satisfied with a career, home, a husband, travel, children, and a few extra frills. After Marilyn read a few books on consciousness expansion in the New Age, she began to experience a tightness in her shoulders. And the therapist says, let's talk to the voice that's making your shoulders tight. You know which one that is? Marilyn moves over to the pusher's chair. The pusher has appeared in previous dialogues and is familiar with the process. The pusher says, you bet we do. It's me again. And the therapist says, I'll be darned. I thought you decided to take a vacation. You sure had me fooled. And the pusher says, well, I did let her go to Hawaii, but I brought a couple of books for her to read. I let her take it easy for a couple of days, and then I got her. Again. Therapist, amazing. How did you do it? Pusher, I got her read The Aquarian Conspiracy, and now there's so much to do. Therapist, hold it. What do you mean there's so much to do? Pusher, well, first of all, we got a chance to visit a kahuna while we were in Hawaii. I think you should study about kahunas and psychic surgery too. Go back to the beginning. This New Age consciousness is fascinating, just fascinating. First, we have to get her diet under control. Then she has to join a health club and start working out regularly. And I want her to do yoga. We need to refine her energy. There's a lot to read, dozens of books. Next, she needs to study about energies, energy fields, balancing, clearing, all that. And so it just goes on. It was funny, but like how different beliefs they'll co-opt and say, like it can be positive pushing or it could be negative pushing, but sometimes you need pusher to get things done, but it doesn't need to rule your life. And she was saying it's not hard to get in touch with your pusher energy. All you have to do is start making a list of things you have to do. Then you'll notice that's your pusher. It's like, you'll just come up with more. And as soon as one thing is chopped off the list, the next thing will come, a new thing will be added. That's the pusher. So we identify, this to-do list, and you just take it for granted, but parts of ways of being, and culturally, like this is not going to be, you were referencing something. It was in the context of another conversation, but how it was different in Japan. Like here, you have to act like you have to have an opinion. You were saying, and like you have to have a voice and opinion, and know what you think and know what you want, and that's good. That's a good thing, right? But it's not the only thing. So this culture celebrates one thing and disowns another thing. And Japanese culture might celebrate one thing and disown another thing. And
Yeah.
so culture is just like people and just like groups have a lot to learn from each other.
Mhm.
And that's, pretty powerful as
Mhm.
long as we don't demonize,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. I think I don't know, all these things that you just said. See if I can say it right. Maybe I'll just say it and then you can help me.
Yeah. Or,
But you know how, let's say, I I hear the voice of inner critic, for example, or it can be anything, but something that I would kind of judge myself for.
Mhm.
Why am I so, critical? But um, so I have this inner critic, and then I maybe judge myself for that, or maybe I judge, other things. And then as soon as we think, oh, I shouldn't be this way, then we try to fix it, right? And then that process of fixing is kind of the suffering,
Mhm.
right? So what you're saying is just being aware is enough, meaning that if I can be aware, it's like, oh, look how critical I am, being right now, or feel that way about me or others, and then just becoming aware. But as soon as I go, oh, I shouldn't be, I need to change that. That's the problem, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a challenge, let's say, because the inner critic, which is why it's so good at its job, it'll co-opt anything, right? It's sort of like that, it'll co-opt anything, no matter what, how innocent it is, and say, oh, you should do that better, or you should do more of that, or you're not good enough at that, or that part of ourselves is so strong.
Yeah.
And so it is an awareness thing. And I think that awareness thing is just about, it reminds me, how we talk about practices, this, whatever you use, there's 100 tools out here, whatever tools we use, whatever practices we have, we need consistency in those. And when we are consistent in those, whether that's meditation or the work of Byron Katie or voice dialogue or breath work or walks, we're going to be consistent in those and show up for ourselves time again. And in that showing up, other parts reveal themselves, and you just have the intention of becoming more aware. You
Yeah.
might, inner critic might take over. It might take over the show for days. But if you have the intention to show up for yourself as an awareness, then you come back to your practice and you start seeing more and more. And I think it's the ego or the critic, the inner critic, that's always looking for a quick fix and wanting change now and
Yeah.
perfectionism now,
Right. I mean, even like let's say I'm angry, about something.
Mhm.
And then I go, oh, I shouldn't feel angry.
Mhm.
So you repress and then you try not to be angry, but then that's where that turmoil, suffering,
Yeah.
shows up. Whereas if I go, oh, I'm angry, I can see this part of me is really angry. And that's okay. I'm just noticing it. And then I let that part of myself just be angry, not to a point where you hurt other people, but um then it like you don't have to go through that, this kind of thing. Or even sadness too. I'm like so sad, but I shouldn't feel sad. I should smile. And then that's when you feel like, there's this thing going. But just becoming aware and then be okay with it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. But how do we do that? And that's the process, right? Because it's like that's where whether you call it unconditional love or attentive listening, and you discharge your sadness. It's how do you be with your inner child
Well,
or your wound,
right.
how do
I
you give it
guess,
space?
yeah. I guess that's like, we talked about a couple times using different stories,
Right, right, right.
like a analogy and metaphor. But like if I, let's say if I'm like real angry, and then anger takes over, but then if I go, okay, who's angry here? What part of me is angry? And then if we can go, oh, there's this little child who is just so upset and angry. And as soon as let's say that's the metaphor, right? There's this inner child, like a child inside me. And then I've had enough experiences of telling my son, don't get angry, don't get upset. And then, now I'm like, man, I totally screwed up there. But then I just ask myself, oh, this is the part of me that's angry, that's like a child.
Mhm.
Maybe I should acknowledge that, her feeling. That's when things can start to diffuse, right? Like that's where you can be aware, and then that not being taken over by
Right.
this anger, right? I mean, is that what you're asking? How do you become aware and then and not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my answer to the question and then the answer is about practice.
Mhm.
It's like we've not been taught these muscles of kind of being with emotions, energy in motion, and we don't even know what to do. Then we've disowned. So, anger is still not, it's somewhat accepted, but it's not really something a lot of us, fear is definitely not something most of us are allowed, to feel physically, so where I know for myself, and we talked about this in terms of the differences in our styles in relationship to our body. Mine is to be afraid of uh, all sensation, and if I feel sensation, I've grown a lot in that. I remember when I just would feel any sensation, it would make me uncomfortable, like I was so in my mental plane.
Mhm.
And yours maybe was more to be flooded by sensation
Mhm.
and not know what to get overwhelmed by it. I got overwhelmed by just a little awareness of it, and you flood, and then you don't know how to get out of it, right? So
Mhm.
so 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 I think I've kind of lost my train of thought there, but I think it's just this practice of learning about yourself and learning how to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just telling you earlier about the phone conversation I had with somebody, and then
Yeah.
I was just really upset because, you know, she was being not unreasonable, but I felt like she was criticizing me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I was critical of her criticizing me. And then I think we have been practicing, and then I was just feeling upset, um but I was aware of being upset. And then after the conversation, I was able to notice that this was taking over. And then, but I kind of, saw that part as a one part of many different parts of me, right? So I was able to see that. And then, and then, um, when I talked about it with my husband, I was also aware, okay, I'm venting,
Mhm,
you
mhm,
know, and that part of me, I just felt like I was allowing this upset child, to vent. Like
mhm.
I didn't want to say I shouldn't be,
Right.
venting,
Yeah.
but okay, let it vent because this is a safe place, you know, talking with my husband or something. And so, and I was telling you how if this had been some years ago, I probably vented without even being aware that I was just venting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, as you were talking, and I asked you the question earlier too, about the inner critic in that dialogue, because it had been interesting to be aware of the inner critic in that, right? Because it was getting put on to this other person. Whereas if you looked at it as, oh, your inner critic was speaking. And I wanted to read something because I found it humorous in this book, but she says, it's in this section about the unusual abilities of the critic. We never fail to be amazed at the intelligence of the critic. It must have an IQ somewhere between 395 and 470. If you understand IQ scores, you will recognize that this is the top of the scale. Anyway, so she said, let us see how this arrogant honesty helped Alice discover the impossibility of pleasing her critic. The critic says, basically, I just don't think she measures up, that's all. Facilitator, can you be more specific? For instance, we were just talking about her weight. How do you feel about that? She's too fat, you know that. Facilitator says, but when she lose weight, remember what you said? Critic, sure, she was too thin, bony in the shoulders. She wasn't sexy enough. I think she could look sexier. Facilitator, teasing. And what would you say if she looked sexier? Critic, I tell her she looks like a tramp. I agree with her father. A woman shouldn't be too provocative. Facilitator, but you just said she should be sexier. Critic, I know, I don't like it when she's too sweet, too much the girl next door. The facilitator, it seems to me that you've got her coming and going. Critic, triumphantly, that's right, I'm like her father. Nothing ever pleased him either. I just think that everything she does is wrong. Besides that, she's stupid. But she does well in her courses. Critic, that's because she's a perfectionist, it's compulsive, and she studies too much. Facilitator, what if she relaxed more? Critic, very self-satisfied. Then I tell her she's lazy. She can't win with me. She might as well give up. The top-notch critic can get us from any angle. I think I have a top-notch critic.
It's so entertaining because
yes, because you can see it in yourself.
Yeah.
This is how it works. This is how it works. It's really funny. But that's when you don't identify with those parts, right? Yeah. I think, my inner critic or the controller could take over this, but I love the idea of knowing yourself through what you project on other people. That's why I've always loved the work of Byron Katie, because it felt so honest, to go to who are you with these thoughts, who are you without these thoughts, turn this thought around. She is critical. I am critical. Right. She is controlling. I am controlling. Yeah. But even better, I have a part of me that's controlling. I have a part of me that's critical. He is insane. I have a part of me that's insane. He is mean. I have a part of me that's mean. He's murderous. I have a part of me that's murderous, like hateful, so we own these parts. Then we don't need to keep putting them out in the world. Right. And then, oh my God, what is the possibility here? So that's kind of why I find it so powerful, but then you have to claim these parts, even the parts you despise and hate and are afraid of, and because you gave them up because they weren't safe to embody those energies, right? Yeah. It wasn't safe to be, what was that one, vulnerable and soft. It wasn't safe to be angry, and critical, or judgmental of others. It wasn't safe to, but now can we create safety inside our own internal space, and we bring something to the world that's more unconditional and not, I want to say accepting, but I don't want to say that because I don't know what that means, to accept all this horrible things that do happen in the world. But if I don't need to put it out in the world, I'm going to see less of it. I mean, this is, the work of Byron Katie talks about it often. You change, the only person you can change, and you change, and then everybody changes around. This
Right.
one gives you concrete examples
Yeah.
of people when you change your energy, that you're like, for example, if I'm a neat freak and my husband is a slob, for example, just to use an example, I'm not saying that about my husband, but just say, if I relax that part of me that's controlling, then it allows that energy to be picked up by
Yeah.
the other person that you're in partnership with.
Right.
And so you balance that. If you see some extreme that you despise in another person, it's because you're taking too much of that energy on. You're not letting that, owning that part of yourself.
Right.
The beach bum,
Yeah.
the slob, the lazy one, the
Right.
whatever, the angry one.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that Byron Katie's work is like, it's like a really good closure, like kind of a ending point when you have issues or, conflicts or something. And I think, sometimes I have to be careful with that, because I know, work of Byron Katie
Yeah.
to do it, right? But if I don't let myself get upset, or feel the fear, or,
Yeah.
whatever, I can like skip that part. And then,
Right.
well, he's critical. Well, I am critical, that that's like, it's almost like, oh shit, I am critical too, and then I might start to feel kind of bad. But if I can just kind of let myself feel that anger, like I'm really upset, I just want to just like, there's, so I'm doing this smart body, smart mind. It's a nervous system work, but I'm doing it this second year. And then one of the practitioners, he talks about this um, healthy anger, thing, and then how you work through your anger. And like when you're angry, so you become aware of your anger, and in the past I would go, I shouldn't feel angry, I'm better than that, I should feel peaceful. But with this work, he says, um, just, you know, curl your lip a little bit. It's like, just this kind of this animal part of yourself, because all the animals, the anger is very important, right? And then, so it's like, just kind of let your lip curl a little bit, and then just follow your impulse. And then it's like, and things like that, just kind of
Yeah.
process, that
Yeah.
thing within yourself. Then like when I do Byron Katie's work, it's like just this perfect wrapping up.
Yeah. I mean, right. I mean, it's definitely spiritual bypass not to go through the whole process of looking at who are you with this thought. And then
Yeah.
when you look at the who are you when you think this thought, you can notice your feelings. You could
Right.
do this snarl and really feel what that feels like on a bodily level. All of these modalities are now more and more conscious of pointing back to your body. Because if you don't point back to the body, you're just sort of going into your mind and the
Right.
thoughts and total spiritual bypass to say, I am, oh, he's critical, I'm critical, because, well, I shouldn't say total, but it might be a good shortcut to calm you down sometimes.
Right.
It's
Right.
not, but it's not the one to really notice and own that part of yourself, so you need to feel it in your body. And how much you discharge and how much you vent, I think that's open to experience and interpretation, and different people have different theories on that. I think you have to open the door and allow yourself the experience of those feelings, but how much you have to feel those, I think there's a fine line, you
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah. Because
So,
sometimes it could be too much,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, 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 uh,
That's why I think
yeah,
it needs to happen kind of organically. Like, he's this guy said, there's like, I don't know what modality this is, but you go on a weekend to this retreat and then you just like use a bat and then just, bash whatever. And he says, it could be a venting thing, but if if you do that, it's just almost like you asked to do it. And then, yeah, I'm just gonna, hit this thing. Whereas like, okay, let's see if I can just gradually, open up and then see what my body wants to do or
right,
what, my subconscious wants to do. Is it to, so you're like listening to your body, listening to your face, what you, and then, your subconscious and all of you might want to do, that impulse that you have.
mhm,
Maybe you just want to imagine slaying this person, or
mhm,
whatever. But and then, like you're saying, how much you want to do, like, if you feel a little too uncomfortable going there, then you just do a little bit of it and then stop and then come back to it when
yeah,
it surfaces you, another time.
yeah.
Or
Yeah, I mean, I've even found when doing the work, when a few years ago, when I first started doing the work of Byron Katie and the worksheets, I would feel a lot of rage when I would do worksheets toward my husband, and he knows that I would just whatever I would write,
yeah.
and I'd be like, who am I with this thought, and I would just
Yeah.
notice what it would felt inside, like just want to hurt this person, like,
Yeah.
you know, and so that was enough for me to. I had to keep visiting it. I would do the worksheet. I have another worksheet to do and another worksheet, but
Yeah.
it was enough of a visiting of that to own that. Like I had rage, I had anger. I needed to not pretend it wasn't there, but I
Mhm.
also needed to look at go to the empowerment place, which is it's not about this other person, it
Right.
is not, it's
Right.
not. And so that's a tricky spot because we've been taught to project everything out and
Yeah.
onward
Right.
to others, and kind of so we want to take responsibility for our emotions and our sensations, and we want to be honest with other people, and sometimes things people do are triggering and they're not good for them, but we have to figure out a way to do that without any blame,
Mhm.
ultimately. I mean, I think you
Mhm.
might in your process do that, but I think the true deep place is, I think something, Michael Brown says blame, how he breaks down words,
Mhm.
be
Deep
lame.
blame.
And I love that because it's just because it disempowers you.
Yeah.
There's another, I think I'm not remember exactly what she said, but it was Emily Weimar quoted Bert Hellinger, the founder of Constellation Work, and he said something about, or maybe she said it, I don't know, um, the victim place is, I'm paraphrasing, is okay to go to, but you realize it's the powerlessness, uh, a rehearsal of the powerlessness.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I've so always felt like if you look inside yourself and you see these things, it is so empowering on some level, as long as your inner critic doesn't take over and
Right.
condemn you for not being better and not being more compassionate and not turning things around quicker, you know. But I also
Yeah.
like what you just said about, it's a nice, if you, after you've done all this work, then you sit in that turnaround and you live that turnaround. Ah, um, let's take something positive. Oh, she is beautiful, and you don't quite see your own beauty. She's amazing, whatever, and you don't quite see, and then you do all this work, and then you come to another place, and I am amazing. And then you sit, and it's a nice way to come home. And it's a nice way to, even though things that we demonize in ourselves, right? I'm critical. Oh, I'm critical. There's peacefulness there, right? I'm critical. Ah, I see something of myself. There's more of me here. I don't have to disown this part of myself.
Ah, that's great.
Does that sound like a good place to end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk more about this.
Yeah. I think we're on to something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk more about this.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye, Aisha. Bye, everybody.
Bye.